We are right at time, and I know more folks will continue to join us. But good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you so much for dialing in to today's webinar and reflection on Operationalizing Never Again 2026. To all of our guests that are joining us, thank you for being here. And I see several of our students that joined this year as well listening in, and look forward to hearing your comments and thoughts as well in the chat. Before we get started today, would like to give a round of introductions. We'll then have kind of two brief speakers, Stephen Levine and Paul Goldenberg, and then turn to our panel today. But before we get started, why don't we do a round of introductions? Stephen, I'm going to come to you last because you'll be the first speaker. But Assistant Chief Tasha Bryant, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, thanks for having me. My name is Tasha Bryant. I am the Assistant Chief of Police for the Metropolitan Police Department, Washington, D.C. I've been a member for 22 and a half years, so thank you all.
Outstanding. Laura.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here today. I'm currently the Deputy Chief of the Hyattsville Police Department. And I know Ben said Laura, and I didn't say Laura Lanham, which we or Mom. Those in the group may know what that it means. I've been here in Hyattsville about 3 years. Previous to that, I was Deputy Chief of the Rockville Police Department in Maryland, and prior to that, to the Montgomery County Police Department, and also in Maryland.
Excellent. And Adam.
Hi, Adam Dobrin. I'm a professor in the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice at Florida Atlantic University, and I want to thank Ben for inviting me here. I feel honored to the people you had to pick from. I feel honored that I was one that you chose. I'm also a reserve deputy with the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, so when we were at the event, I was in uniform.
Outstanding. And Stephen.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Stephen Levine. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs here at UVA. I've been at UVA 20 years doing all things history and academic and administration. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, again, welcome to everyone, and thank you for being on and joining on this conversation today. Really, this webinar is focused on the recent law enforcement public safety delegation to Poland, centered on Holocaust studies, historical reflection, and leadership lessons focused in the modern public safety environment. The discussion today is not just about the history that we learned. It's about understanding some of the importance of the ethical leadership, the role of institutions during times of crisis, and how those lessons from historical context shape public safety and criminal justice today. Our amazing panel will share their reflections. There are 3 of 130 stories on this delegation this year, but we'll give you different voices and perspectives of why this mattered. To those that are listening in, whether you are a past attendee or potentially a future attendee, or just curious and interested about this particular delegation, thank you so much for being here. Stephen, why don't you set a bit of context with the course and the instruction that led us to Poland?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Happy to do that. I'll talk a little bit about the why, what the intention was, and share a little bit about the design for those who aren't as familiar with it. So as Ben alluded to, the purpose of this whole program is really for public safety professionals to explore their own leadership, everything from ethics to decision making to how they in their professional roles can help prevent the dehumanization of certain groups of people. And through this experience, they explore how law enforcement evolved from protectors of the public to committing state-sponsored mass murder of about 6 million Jews. And what they do, more important than that, is contemplate how they can, in their roles, ensure that something like this never happens again. So that's kind of why, that's the why part. I'll say a few words about the design as well. We created 2 course sections, one for students who are matriculated at the University of Virginia in the Master of Public Safety. And we also created another one for participants who are not matriculated in this graduate program. And we created what I'm going to call an academic foundation for this experience that we'll talk more about. So through a combination of readings and videos, we read histories on the various police battalions and what they actually did in World War II. We read theoretical articles on complicity. We watch some videos on topics such as obedience to authority. And we bring in expert guest speakers, such as one from the U.S. Holocaust Museum and Memorial, and descendants of Holocaust survivors. Participants really, through all of this, gain a deep, nuanced perspective of the Holocaust, and particularly law enforcement's role in it. Then there's the experiential part of the program, which is really the core of it. And I want to say a few words about that. So participants spend several days combined in Germany and in Poland, exploring historical sites, including the House of Wannsee, just outside of Berlin, Germany, where there was the famous 1942 Wannsee Conference. They also go to Auschwitz and Birkenau death camps, and we do tours there and other programming, including the March to the Living, of course, which is a key part of this whole program. While in Germany and Poland, experts guide discussions. They lead tours of Krakow, Poland, of the camps that I just mentioned. They also help participants gain a deeper understanding of how Jews were dehumanized, persecuted, tortured, and of course murdered in the Holocaust and the role that law enforcement played in that. We'll hear a lot more from participants about this, of course, but I just want to say that I spent my whole career in academia. It has been decades in academia. Yes, I am a dinosaur. And I've never seen students so transformed by an educational experience. So I'm just honored to be a part of it, to partner with Rutgers in this experience. And I look forward to the next iteration in 2027. With that, Ben, I'll pass it back to you. You're muted, Ben.
Yep, that is going to be a very lonely conversation to myself. Thank you, Stephen, for that context. At this point, we're going to go ahead and turn to the panel. I'm going to ask a few questions. I likely will go off script here fairly quickly as you share your thoughts and reflections, and then we'll hear from Paul on the end of the webinar with some closing thoughts. So going into this trip, you probably had certain expectations in mind. Can you talk a little bit about what your expectation was going in versus what you experienced? Um, Maybe we can start, Laura, with you, and then we'll just hear from each on this one.
Yeah, and just to frame this, I had been on last year's trip, so I did have some expectation going into this, but I did not go, and nor did we have the portion in Berlin. And for me, it's probably where the space I'll take on the question, and that is the parallels to two different time frames, right? You're dealing with the Holocaust at one time frame, and then when East Germany and the wall went up in Berlin. And while they're two distinct time frames, the connections, I wasn't really expecting that. And then bringing that to the parallels of today, with the walls built with normal human beings, meaning fathers, sons, are on one side, meaning they're evil. Somehow they evolve into an evil authoritative person, or they become a victim of that society. And how does that happen? And how do we today stand in the middle of atrocities we see going on, or just simply inequities within the community, so that we can ensure that the past is not crouching into what's happening here in America? So, the MOU at Berlin, which was signed, was incredibly impactful for me because the room we were in overlooked the gates that kept people on a different side, and your rights were determined on which side you were of those walls.
Thanks so much, Laura. Adam, coming to you.
Amen.
In
Okay,
terms
amen.
of
Thank you.
expectations, I think that the program really laid out and prepared us for what we were going to see and do. I've been involved in academia longer than Stephen has, I bet. And I've been on a lot of programs, and I've never seen one that was so well organized, so clear in what we were to do and what we were going to do. And the communications from the organizers to us were just amazing. I've never seen anything like that. So I wasn't terribly like surprised by anything we did because you guys let us know this is what's going to happen, this is how it's going to happen, this is what we're going to do. So the expectations were out there. You let us know exactly what was going to happen. Now
So I'm going to push on that, Adam, just a
oh,
little bit.
okay.
So when you were actually there, I think you knew what you were likely going to see and encounter logistically.
Right.
But did anything surprise you when you were actually there that
Oh,
that
the
actually.
emotions, absolutely. The emotions were, I mean, you can't go into this not expecting there to be an emotional response, but there was a lot of that. There was some of the information that we told. I've been, a dabbler in Holocaust studies my whole life, and some of the things I've learned on this trip were surprising and overwhelming. And sometimes I had to take sit and just let it wash over me. But yeah, it was. There was a lot. Obviously, there was a lot to this. But again, it was just organized and set up in such a way that it was there weren't surprises, but there were things that I wasn't absolutely expecting. The one that hit me the most, and I have this for later questions, was at the end of the tour one day in Auschwitz. There was a room with a book of names, and I just didn't expect to see my twin brother's name, my son's name. I looked up family names, and I'm crying now. So yeah, there was a lot of emotion.
Hmm, that's very powerful. Thank you, Tasha.
As a first timer, of course, you guys did a phenomenal job of preparing us to what our days were going to look like, what we could expect. For me, I was extremely emotional. And to Adam's point about the room with the book of names in it, I'm going to get into this later on. But as I was in there looking at the books, and first of all, I was overwhelmed by how many names were there. To hear about it and to see it for yourself is different. But as I'm looking at the book of names, there was a family member of a Holocaust survivor in the room, and she came to me and said that she could feel my kindness from across the room, and it drew her to me, and she thanked me for being there. She was attracted to the flag on my uniform, the Washington D.C. And I mean, like, I was overwhelmed, like it made me cry. And then another participant, Ganesha, actually captured the interaction, and she sent the picture to me later. But my point is that sometimes just showing up as your authentic, caring self, other people can feel that. I have so many experiences from this trip. I know we only have an hour, but that probably was it for me to go into this expecting to be emotional. I was expecting that, but the overpouring of support and love and how welcome we all were by these amazing people, that did it for me. So that's my answer.
Thank you, Chief, for sharing that piece. Laura and Adam, I'm going to ask that you just weigh in a bit. So the House of Anzi conference is a new addition this past year. Would you mind sharing a little bit of thoughts about the time in Berlin, specifically in that house, and kind of what you took away from that additional stop? Laura, maybe we start with you and then go to Adam.
Okay. So first of all, certainly I read about it, and I thought I knew about it, but I don't think I actually did. And what struck me, it was almost like a command ops meeting of the leaders and the Nazi party who knew they were going there to execute a plan. And just the thought that people knew that they were going there to decide how they would execute 6 million people was just, it was hard for me to imagine that nobody looked at each other and thought that was a bad idea. And that was just how did that happen really stuck with me. But one of the biggest takeaways really had nothing to do with the place we were, and that was in the discussions in the room. And when it came up about the race laws in America having an impact on the Nazi Party and how they had looked to America to see how we had done some of the horrific things we had done during the dehumanization of the African American population, that they looked at some of what we had done, how we define race, and they thought it was too strict. And just to hear words like that brought me back to the ownership here in America. But I felt that portion was incredibly important. And for me personally, it brought a lot more knowledge about what had occurred there and to understand better what had happened.
Thank you, Laura. I think one of the things that stood out to me was how quick that conference meeting was, right? In my head, it was a multi-day thing, right? And the reality is 90 minutes in and out. Adam.
That also struck me, and I think it was a great addition to this program. I think going from the beginning of how it starts bureaucratically, and then like Laura was saying, we did a lot of historical progression of even pre-Wannsee conference and how we got to there, and then with the trip ending up at the conclusion, the final solution of the Jewish question. I think as a program, it really added a lot. The part that hit me the most, again, like what you said, Ben, was it was brief. They were saying they met and then they went back to their office and had breakfast. I mean, they didn't even it wasn't even long enough for them to have skipped breakfast to go to it. But as an academic, what hit me and the part that I have brought back and I've already shared with many people is that there were 15 participants at this event and a secretary. Of the 15 participants, nine had PhDs and others had advanced law degrees and advanced theological degrees. And so we often hear that the way you can combat this sort of risk is through education, and that clearly doesn't stand up to this test. That education by itself is not an inoculation against committing evil. In fact, it facilitated it. These were engineers and logistics experts who facilitated this, and that's what this conference was about. I didn't know that the killings had already started en masse. There was 800,000 Jews already shot, but they realized this is an inefficient mechanism. So let's get our German efficiency and figure out the best way to do that. That's what the conference really was. So that was really shocking to me that nine of the 15 had PhDs.
Thanks, Adam. Chief Bryant, you're responsible for institutional accountability, running internal affairs for the Metropolitan Police. Uh, with this kind of role that you've played for many years and thinking about law enforcement and criminal justice professionals, what lessons did you take away regarding leadership responsibility and institutional accountability through your distinct lens?
That's a great question, Ben. Um, because the day-to-day policing in a major city, we talk about accountability, transparency, constitutional policing, and law enforcement. And going there and coming back here reminded me why it's so important that we do not marginalize any group of people. The way that we show up in community and how we treat people matters. We have to make sure that the things that we have in place, not just policies, but our training and the messaging that we are giving to our membership and the community lines up with what the law says and how we make people feel, because we think that we're doing good until something happens that reminds us that we didn't do all that we could to make sure that we are being clear and that our practices are constitutional and that people don't feel afraid of police. Something like this happened because one person turned into two people, then 15 people, and 20. It didn't happen with one person. One person is responsible for lighting a match that destroyed a community of people. And if we don't do our part to ensure that we are the gatekeepers for democracy, that this doesn't, that's how it starts with a little thing, that little thing that you don't look into. So I came back reminded that not only the position that I hold is important for that reason to prevent that, but making sure that we are looking at our checks and balances, that we're not just checking a box.
It's interesting in the New York Times today, there's an article about kind of authoritarian regimes and specifically points to the mid or underperforming government bureaucrat responsible for a variety of different actions that gives power to those that want to stay in power. And I think we saw case in points examples where, just the sheer number of people that were involved and, complicitly involved, really gave a lot of momentum to a very few individuals' truly intended outcomes.
And treated it like it was lawful.
Well, it was the law. And that's a whole other question. So let me pivot to Laura or Adam. I'll let whoever would like to take this up. Um, why is it important for law enforcement leaders today to study these historical events? We're looking at something that happened 80 years ago, 80 plus years ago. Why does it matter for today's leaders?
Laura?
Okay, I'll grab it.
Uh,
So when you walk into Auschwitz, one of the first buildings that you go to, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it's about if you are don't understand what happened in the past, then you can't move forward and you're doomed to repeat it. Kind of obviously it's said more eloquently than me. And I think that like we talk about that in law enforcement, no matter what space you're talking about and things that happened that shouldn't have happened, and that we were part of or responsible for, that before you can move forward, you have to understand what happened in the past, meaning that we're there, we're looking at, we're studying it, and that we're understanding at least partially how it happened, because I still can't wrap my mind around how it happened. And then we're taking that and making sure that our organization culture is healthy and that we're walking the walk and our expectations and accountability are in line with that, meaning are our policies, our procedures, is our training in line with these expectations that we have to ensure that we are ethically policing. And this is kind of the birth of, I'm sure most people listening are familiar with the programs of EPIC and ABLE, New Orleans, in and out of Georgetown, because when you have an authoritative design, which we do, which is important for some of our responses, we also have to have a healthy way for people to question what is going on and to be able to stop behaviors at the lowest level. I mean, Tasha talked about it didn't start with one person. I mean, it started with one person, that was two, and that was three. But if we don't have those healthy avenues to make sure that we are being accountable internally and to our community, then atrocities are bound to happen again.
Thank you, Laura. Adam, do you want to add anything on to that?
just a little bit. I mean, clearly, that's the point of this is the if you don't study the past, you're doomed to repeat it. But that's sometimes that's lip service. Good things happen in the past, bad things happen in the past. Yeah, we do have to be aware of that. I think in the past 10 years or so in American policing, this has really come back to the forefront. Because of what some of the big events that we've seen on TV. And I know there are a lot of states, mine included, where now there are laws, there's mandatory training, not for command staff so much as line people on it's a duty to interfere. That if they see something that violates any of these ethical rules, that the deputy or officer who not only does it, but the one who doesn't stop it from happening is culpable as well. And I think that's a great step, but there's not that same kind of law for politicians, and we really don't have that sort of control. And one of the things that I've pointed out in classes for years, and I didn't come up with this, that the police are particularly in sort of our Robert Peel based history is police are a reflection of the community. And we can say as much the police can do this, can do this, do this, but if the community is such like it was in Nazi Germany, then the community is what guides the police. And if we have a community that's pushing for actions like this, it's difficult for the police to prevent that because they are simply a reflection of the wishes of the community. So these are really difficult questions to look at.
Yeah, in some of the sections of the course, we had discussions about what individuals would do. What would you do, right, if you were in that position? And some folks said, well, I'd resign or step down. And the reality is the cascade of events that then we'd look at, well, someone else would step into power. Well, what would they do, right? And that really led to that a thoughtful reflection in some of the sections where that conversation came
So
up. So I want to go
Oh,
back to
wait,
just
can
go
I
ahead.
jump in real quick? Two things
Yeah.
real quick. Everyone says that I wouldn't do this, but there's decades of psychological research that shows people do. And then the other thing that I didn't know that I learned on this event is that they said that historically, well, if this guard didn't do this, then they would get killed. And then our instructors on this program said there's no historical evidence that a single guard, police officer, or soldier was killed for not carrying out these orders. They may have been fired, they may have been ostracized, but none of them were killed. And so I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
and you look at social pressures and so forth. Stephen, I could tell you wanted to chime in there, please.
yeah, I just wanted to chime in real quickly on that. And Browning and Westerman, who we read, they have mined all of the documents we have. They've looked at the post-World War II testimony. They concur, right? No one was forced to kill, and no one was persecuted for not killing. The other thing on complicity, there's a gray area of what is and isn't complicity, and we read about that. But we know that if you look at Krakow, Poland, for example, including law enforcement, we estimate 97% of people complied to round up
Wow.
Jews and deport them and do all of that. So that is the reality of what happened. So just talking about what people actually like might think they would want to do, but what they actually do in times like this. So just
I
wanted to
know
add that in, Ben.
I know you and I had the chance to grade papers, and one of the things we had a lot of is, that's interesting perspective. Back that up with historical evidence, right? And as folks dug into the evidence, I think there were some real aha moments. So, just pivoting forward, Adam, you shared with us kind of one instance of this, but Laura or Tasha, maybe if you'd be willing to share a moment that may have affected you personally, whether it was a conversation or something that you reflected on once you returned home.
For me, it has to be the video of Mr. Allen Hall when he was talking to the daughter of one of the young ladies who presented at the March of Life. The things that he said to her and about remembering, make sure you tell the story because the day's going to come when I'm not anymore, right?
Mhm.
But you'll remember what I told you and what your parent, that right there, it stuck with me. That stuck with me. And I took a picture of a quote from Offutt's that I also stuck with me. Remember only that I was innocent and just like you, mortal on that day. I too had a face marked by rage, by pity and joy, quite simply a human face. Those two things stuck with me and I brought those home with me. I'm an empath anyway, but to see that and feel that, I'll never forget it. And then like his energy, like he's 91 years old and he survived all of these things and he's telling us, no, that's not the end of my story. This is the beginning of yours. Go out into this world and be kind, be fair, love, teach others. Okay, I don't want to take up all the time, but those two things stuck with me, definitely.
Yeah, and if you want to listen to his story, it is on the March of the Living's website. It's very powerful. Yeah, I believe he's done 22 March of the Livings before, and hopes to do many, many more.
Yes.
Our delegation had the great fortune of meeting many survivors throughout the time that we were there, and obviously there are fewer and fewer alive, as time goes on and on. But that opportunity to meet and hear firsthand reflections and that theme of passing the torch to the younger generation, that certainly resonates. Laura, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, real quick, we learned the story of Elisa, who was a 15-year-old who went to Auschwitz. She ended up in a building with medical experience with Dr. Mengele. And there was a Dr. Samuels there who was a Jewish doctor who this reminds us not to know what you can do when you're put in a role um, that is challenging, and how you can push back within the confines of that limited role. So Dr. Samuels was a Jewish doctor working in this hospital who, which you would expect, all the Jewish captives thought that he was evil, and how could he, be complicit with what was going on. He performed a medical what Elisa thought was a sterilization of her, but what turned out he had opened her up and closed her back up, and and without the German authorities realizing what he had done. Later on, she found out the truth when she was pregnant and ended up having 2 children. So it kind of goes into the discussion we just had that I know Stephen was talking about, with human complicity, about organizational norms, and about what difference we can make. And I think that really plays in what we're doing here, regardless of the political structure we're in, whether the roles we're in, we can make a difference in individual lives when we find space to do that.
Thank you. I'm going to come back, Chief Bryant, to you one more time, and Deputy Chief Lanham as well on this front. So you're both in senior leadership roles within law enforcement agencies. What are some practical ways? I know Adam brought up Able and Epic, but what are some practical ways that you can take some of the lessons that you learn, whatever those lessons are, back to your agencies and to other law enforcement professionals that are listening on this call? What are some of those things that they can consider doing differently as a result of this experience? That's not an easy question, so take it as you
Well,
wish.
Well, for me, the easiest would be to start to have the conversations, whether it be introducing the dialogue at the executive table, because to your point, we are in leadership roles, senior leadership roles, and starting the conversation there, kind of looking at what I came back with and comparing that to what we're actually doing, looking at our curriculum, seeing if we can put those things in our professional development, and just having smaller conversations with members versus just doing one mass discussion, breaking it down into smaller groups and having those kind of conversations. I think that probably is the easiest way to see if we're actually being impactful. You got to do a smaller group, because to just push out a mass message like an email, that won't do it. You have to have the conversations in real time, and we have to make time to do that.
Thanks, Deputy Chief Lanham.
Yeah, I agree with everything Tasha said, and this is not easy. I think there's too much black and white. There's too much misinformation out here. So what does that look like? And I'll give an example. We had, something that probably happened in every major city across the country, where we have federal agents doing enforcement in our community. We have communities standing up, blocking cars. And it's about, I went out there and I listened to each side. I felt I gave the community some legitimacy to what they were feeling, and I was able to bring calm and some resolution. It's about standing in the gap. It's about making sure that the misinformation is corrected, and it's about ensuring that people are treated equally. And when you're walking the walk, not just talking the talk, the officers see it, the community sees it, and you'll have more modeling of that behavior versus picking a side and standing on what side that is, or what your politician, depending on what state you live in, says you should be doing.
Thank you. So, Adam, I'm going to come to you on a slightly different variant on this question. And to our audience, please feel free to use the Q&A feature. If you have any questions that you want routed in the panel, we're in the home stretch here of things, but please feel free to throw questions in, and I will ensure that those get addressed. Use the Q&A feature if you can. So, Adam, you have worked in academia for a long time, and you've seen teaching in a variety of different ways and styles. Talk to the audience today a little bit about the value of the experiential learning format of a program like this, and what it'll allow you to do that just picking up Battalion 101 or some of the other texts might not have done the same.
It hard question. I wish you would have given me this one in advance.
Few curveballs.
Really, it brought it to life. Like you said, it's not just a stale book. It really makes it alive, even though this was 80 years ago. You don't think this is history. This isn't going to, look at dinosaur bones. This is something that, our parents or grandparents could have been around for. And so the learning, this isn't just something you read and then forget about after the final exam. This has been seared into all of our souls. This is something we will never forget. It was great. It's difficult to think of how you can do this for every discipline, because I've been thinking, how can I do this? Can we take a tour of this? math, you can't do this. But history, it gets the benefit of you can go and live the history, and it really makes it not just enjoyable, but you really do learn about what it was. And again, the programs that this had us participate in at Wannsee, and the guides that we had in Krakow, they really knew their stuff. And if that would have just been a classroom lecture, you may have gotten some of it and forgotten some of it, but the modality of this was just awesome. And again, tremendous amount of information. But because of the way it was presented, I think a lot of it will be retained, if not necessarily the facts so much as the message and the risks and the problems with what we're studying. So I didn't I've never I the stuff I studied in grad school pales in comparison to the week that I did this in person.
Thank you. Uh, I would love to go through all three of you, just have you share a brief thought. Um, for folks that are listening or will listen to either the YouTube or future recording this that are considering coming on this delegation, help me sell the program, would you? Give us your why should future people consider participating in a delegation like this or this one in particular?
For me, I would do it again. I think that for anybody that is in a leadership role where you're talking about impacting movement and decision making for other people, this delegation is so important. I think I came away from there even checking myself to say, do you do this? Do you do that? Like I think it's important for anybody that's in leadership to see and experience this and to hear from people. And not just for that, but also it wasn't just about hearing from the people who lived through that and who live in that city now, but the opportunity that I had to talk to my colleagues that work in other countries and other cities just to see some of the things that they do in their cities or their countries that we don't do here. So I think I walked away from there grateful for the experience, but also happy for the interaction and the partnerships that were formed as a result of participating in this. So I say do it.
With over a dozen countries, there were a lot
Yes,
of different
yes,
perspectives that
yes.
were there.
And having an opportunity to sit at tables and hear from different people, and we all had some of the same perspectives, some of them had different perspectives, but the respect and the love was there. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Adam,
I'd
do
like,
you?
yeah. I this was almost like it was a because of it, it was so emotional and so intense that it was a bonding experience. It's the same as going through. I mean, it's not military boot camp or anything like that, but it's not summer camp either. This was emotional. It was bonding, and there were tremendous relationships, lifelong relationships that have been built out of this program. One of the things that struck me is in the meeting after we came back, there was a discussion about wearing the uniform, and some of the people were saying, I didn't really want to wear that. I hesitate, and yeah, I didn't want to bring it with me. But I got to tell you, the standing ovation we got at the event in Krakow, the VIP ceremony, was one of the most emotional things I've ever been part of as well. People were coming up to us, not just in the March of the Living, but obviously there, but in the city and everywhere, just saying, thank you, we appreciate what you're doing. And then there would be occasionally, Ben said this ahead of time, there'd be people from your hometown who would come up and recognize you and say, thank you for being here. That said, if you're in a civilian position, don't feel like you're outside or left out, that the civilians absolutely need to participate in this. And this should be geared not just for uniform law enforcement, but political leadership as well, I would say. But I'm not a salesman. That's why I'm in academia. I can't sell anything. But this program should sell itself. This is just absolutely a wonderful, life-changing experience.
Before we go to Laura, Adam, I also would love it if you can just reflect for 1 second. You serve as a reserve police officer, and that was very intentional to include some of our reservists in that capacity. Help draw the connection to the audience today to Battalion 101 and specifically the nature of some of the voluntary police.
So Battalion 101 was an auxiliary unit, which meant it wasn't their full-time job. And if you go to the Holocaust Museum in DC, which been organized for our volunteer police group to do a law enforcement tour of, and I'm sure many of you have done that as well. You walk in, the first picture you see is of auxiliary police, and that was a kick in the gut. That we like to think that our informal motto is we're good people doing good things for good reasons. And then all of a sudden you see something like this and you go, wait a second, maybe there's a dark side to volunteer policing. Maybe people are doing this for dark reasons. And so it really was sort of shocking to see the involvement of the reservists and the auxiliary being at the front line of this. And then they were the front line, and then regular police were also at the front line. That a lot of the people in this program didn't said they didn't realize this was not just military, that this was a police action. So I think I got sort of a double dose for being a volunteer, and then the triple dose by being a PhD after coming back from Bonsai. Like I just get this weight of responsibility of my people in my position being just necessary for this action.
Thank you. Laura, and back to you specifically on what you'd consider saying to someone considering for a future.
Yeah, I'd say, we owe it to our community. We owe it to our department. In law enforcement, I think we operate, within, and I think it was mentioned before, a political environment and a community, and doing law enforcement in a manner that is congruent with our surroundings, but that also can result in blind spots. And by going to the grounds of where these atrocities occurred, you see the consequences. You get outside of some of the echo chamber. You see the consequences. You develop a network of people who will support you in the organizational change if you need to do it, organizational shift, but ensuring that you are continuing to lead in an ethical and constitutional manner that was expected of you when you took the oath. And the two things I've heard from people when they say they didn't go. There were two things I heard. They were too busy and they didn't have money. The reality is we can all make happen what we prioritize, and this deserves a priority. And if you have any questions, contact me directly.
Thank you, Laura. We're going to come to Paul Goldenberg, chairman from the international delegation, in just 1 second. But before we do the final comments and wrap up here, I would like to invite any questions from those that are listening in. Feel free to put those in the chat. And to each of our participants, I'd love to do one kind of round robin of, if you could break down the experience into a sentence, a phrase, a word, something short, what would that be? Uh, Whoever would like to go first. Adam, go ahead.
Intense. The topic was intense. The timing was intense. If you're looking for a break, this isn't. I mean, you got to realize, and they tell you up front. Like I said, we're prepared. This is 7 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. You're going, and so it's intense, and the topics are intense, but so rewarding.
Absolutely. And bring good walking shoes. Chief Bryant.
Um, humility, like a reminding us of the human spirit and resilience. Like it was emotional. It was emotional for all of us, but this experience, by far, I will never forget.
Thanks, Laura.
And I'd just say, I know that the program is titled Never Again. Well, Never Again is our responsibility. And there's nowhere that you'll get a better sense of what that means than standing in uniform where the atrocities occurred. You will never forget it.
Thank you. And thank you to each of the panelists. So we have one question from the audience. And this one, Stephen, I'm actually going to come to you if that's all right, as the non-law enforcement person in the room. And this came from Alejandro, who was one of our participants this past year. Alejandro, good to see you, and thank you for being on. Stephen, maybe you can share your impressions and comments you heard from officers who attended the march. There's so many different perspectives in different regions, with different nationalities present. Like, what are some of the things that really stood out to you from what you heard?
Yeah, the couple things. One is, and I know some alluded to that or this already in this discussion, is some just didn't realize that police, law enforcement were involved at all in carrying out the Holocaust. And not only to learn that they were involved, but the depth of it, right? More than 1 million people probably murdered on account of police. And then there's all those things the police did to help make the rest of it happen, right? So that was one thing I heard. The other thing I heard was being in these spaces, and again, Laura, Adam, and Tasha, you each mentioned this. There's something, of course, reading the historical monographs, reading the articles, even listening to some of our experts and some of the Holocaust survivor descendants in our online meetings was very powerful. But there's something very different walking through that gate at Birkenau and seeing the intentionality, the design of that place to kill people by the thousands, right? The barracks, the crematoria, where the train came in, where people are divided. So I heard over and over again, just I can't believe what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing. So I'd say those two things stood out, the involvement and the depth of the involvement and being in those places and feeling it and just imagining, right, informed in an informed way what happened here. And just the emotional response to that. Tasha, you alluded to this quite a bit. A lot described an emotional experience beyond what they felt before, just being in this place where humans did to other human beings what we really can't, it's hard to even imagine, right? The atrocities, the torture, the starvation, the death. So those are the two things I think stood out from my interactions with our participants while on the experience and after it.
Thank you. And thank you to each of the participants for sharing your reflections, your thoughts, and for those that are considering joining the delegation in the future to be able to listen in and learn from what you went through and what you saw. I know just hearing and talking to so many of the participants that this is an experience that really stayed with them. Paul, if you are with us, and it looks like you are on, I would love to turn the floor to you to say a few words, and the floor is yours if you're in a position to unmute. Paul, if you're in a space to unmute, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
We can, loud and clear.
All right.
Good to hear you. Good to see you. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections.
I'm hoping you can't see me right now, but that's
We can see a photo of you.
oh, okay, okay. All right. Listen, I sat back and I listened to this, and I reflected back to 6.5, 7 years ago when there was literally two of us that participated in the march, and I was asked to speak at the march regarding how I felt about this, reflecting as a seasoned, jaded, a former police executive myself, and what it meant to participate. And I have to tell you that in my 35 plus years of being engaged in policing, literally at all levels, and being engaged in some pretty complex programs around the world, nothing touches this program. It has been one of the most humbling experiences for me personally. In so many ways, I can't even begin to tell you. As someone that has run some of these larger programs, and everyone always wants to know, what are the milestones? What are your milestones? Tell me about your milestones. And the milestones are usually quantitative versus quality. They're usually how many numbers went through, how many people got A's, how many people believe that they succeeded, and that's how programs such as this are judged. Um, so for me, every single one of you is a milestone. Hearing your words, you are not rookies. You are experienced. I can't tell you how many hundreds of years in policing was involved in that march. You're 20-year, 25-year veterans. You're more than veterans. You're police leaders. You've achieved, and many of you, I won't. You'll sit back and you'll reflect for a few minutes and say, maybe I was at a point in my career where it's like I can't even take a breath anymore. Is this what it is? Is this where it's come to? Is this what it's all about? Um, and this, I think, was an opportunity to reflect and to remind ourselves how damn important our jobs are. It's not a job. It's not a job. And I don't have to remind any of you. You're all seasoned police executives, but what this did is reminded us that without us, there are no democratic institutions. Without us, people live and die, and our jobs are just so critical to maintaining, levels of society where they don't go totally nuts. I mean, think about the last couple of days. I'm sure there isn't anyone on this webinar that isn't aware of what happened at the mosque with these young self-radicalized young people. And just a week ago, I just finished the article for Police One. I hope you'll read it. It's not a pitch, but I address protests at houses of worship. And I bring that up before I close out because I just can't imagine how politicians and policymakers are allowing these protests, some of which have turned violent, at our houses of worship. Two synagogues in New York City, the Jewish members of the congregation said, I don't even want to send my kid to school on Friday. I'm afraid to go pray on Saturday. So we have seen when this happens, ultimately what the end result could be. So I want to personally thank each and every one of you. I can't tell you how much the University of Virginia, Ben, William, Rob, everyone Steve has just been extraordinary in their commitment, their unwavering commitment to making this program successful. And I can assure each and every one of you, we couldn't have done it without them being by our side. I'll close by saying that there's more to come. This journey has only just begun. We owe it to the rest of our brothers and sisters out there that are putting up the good fight and are out there saving lives every day to continue this work, to grow this program. I'd love to see 300, 400 next year and thousands thereafter.